I wanted to talk about cybersecurity and what it is briefly, and then I'll ask the panelists to jump on to that subject if they want to add anything. We ask that you hold questions until the later part of the meeting tonight, which will have more of an open discussion. But I have some questions that members have submitted during registration, so we'll get to those along with others, and then we will go into any audience questions towards the end. So what is cybersecurity? It is a protection of information systems, anything that's connected to the internet. Cyber attacks are usually aimed at accessing, changing, or destroying sensitive information, extorting money from users, or interrupting normal business processes. Implementing effective cybersecurity measures is particularly challenging today because there are more devices than people, and attackers are becoming more innovative. There are thousands of cybersecurity solutions out there today, and they're vastly changing and improving as we grow on a daily basis. So I wanted to ask the panel if they have anything to add to what cybersecurity is and maybe how it relates to the government broadly. So we'll get into more specifics.
Sure. I was thinking about this on the way over. Cybersecurity in the federal space tends to be risk management, right? And how to relate risk management to sort of things we do every day. When you leave your house, you lock your front door. You lock your front door so it's less of a target to somebody trying all the front doors. You lock your car so that somebody isn't trying the door handles and finds a car to go through. Risk management is, in its simplest terms, very much like that. Risk management from the government is a lot more complex. The missions are much more complex. The data they collect is much more intrusive from the public. And so risk management does take on different levels of complexity in conjunction with that. But in its simplest form, it's risk management.
The only thing I would really add to that is when you look at your own house, how many people have like Nest thermostats or cameras or different devices of that nature? And so you can kind of relate it back to your own environment. All those different devices, like I know in my house, and I might be a little bit on one extreme, because I do a lot of automation and IoT in my house, so lights turning on at certain times and things of that nature. Because I was sick of setting that little timer dial to have a light turn on in my house, especially with daylight and things of that nature. But I have 42 different devices connected to my Wi-Fi network between smart TVs, Blu-rays, Xboxes, PlayStation, and I don't have all this, but I'm just kind of referencing all these different devices. And so to what Gary's saying is it's all risk management as it relates to all those different devices connected to the internet, and they're all targets of what hackers can utilize. And one of the big things I look at a lot of times is us as individuals and what we all have a threat landscape of some type, shape, or form. And it's not necessarily the attacker is going right after a DoD institution or DHS or Justice. They might even utilize some of our private organizations or even our personal assets to be able to piggyback or tailback off of our device to get into that other institution. And we've seen that in history of other places where, I don't know if anyone recalls the big hack of 2013 with the RSA, where the hackers actually hacked into RSA to steal the keys of those little RSA tokens. They then utilized those keys from those tokens to go after Lockheed Martin, GE, Northrop Grumman, and places of that nature. So you got to look at cybersecurity a lot of that standpoint of the risk mitigation is what Gary's referring to. So, Chris?
Yeah, so cybersecurity, to add on to what Matt and Gary were saying, is truly education. It's truly about knowing what not to click on. So if you get sent an email that looks suspicious, it's simply question it, right? It's not simply click on the link that's in the email. It's simply do a little bit more due diligence and actually understand what the email is telling you to do, right? Just employing common sense, really. That's what it comes down to.
Bear with us, we only have one mic. But that leads into the next topic, or next question, Chris. Great answers, by the way. What is the top cybersecurity concern our world faces today, and maybe how it relates to the hospitality industry as we are event planners, contractors, and suppliers?
Yeah, so So the way that I look at it is, I think the biggest concern as it relates to the hospitality industry and the event planners, it's truly PII, right? It's personal identifiable information. And the exposure of that information, like sending an email in open text to a colleague, right, that could be intercepted, that's definitely risky, going back to your earlier point, Gary. It's taking an extra level of security, simply uploading that to an FTP site or sending that on a USB, actually handing that to an individual versus sending it via email. That's the sort of thing that's going to protect you from a PII and hospitality perspective.
So the funny thing is, you talk about email and social engineering, things of that nature, and I'll give like a use case here a little bit. We did a guide point for a commercial enterprise, did a test of that organization's phishing expertise. And so we used LinkedIn and maybe some other things. I think we were having a conversation at the bar earlier before the event started about email addresses living on corporate websites and items of that nature. But we were able to fish a lot of those email addresses out of that organization we were charged with trying to gain access into. And so we pulled about 500 emails out of this organization, and we use those 500 emails and send them a specially crafted email rather than, hey, thanks for shopping at Best Buy this weekend. We want to have you fill out a survey so you can have a $5 gift card at your next purchase at Best Buy. And I'm picking on Best Buy, but insert, wherever you might shop on the weekend. And we sent out a bunch of these. Over the course of maybe about 2 hours, it actually crashed our server because we had so many respondents in that organization. So going back to Chris's comment about scrutinizing what you're getting and what you get from outside of your organization, and even as much as I've seen inside of government organizations and even at Guide Point, where when somebody wants into your organization, they're going to try their darndest. So if you look at, my last name's Keller, K-E-L-L-E-R, when somebody might send an email, if they're trying to spoof me, it might come from Matt, M-A-T-T.K-E-1-L-E-R. And so it's, when somebody looks at it, it's like, oh, that's Keller, I know him, I'm going to click on it. So that's really some of the common sense aspects of what we call cybersecurity in today's day and age, is actually looking at and scrutinizing emails that are coming in from that external phase. I use that as a use case to kind of make yourself aware, because in hospitality and things like that, we trade a lot of emails, especially with external vendors and external organizations. And a lot of those things can be like, hey, we're going to utilize you to get inside to maybe steal who your attendees are that are going to this conference or items of that nature. So, Gary?
I would say start in your mind with an image of what a hacker is and throw it away. It's not some kid in their mom's basement with a laptop.
In a hoodie.
With the lights off, looking at a computer, right? It's not that at all. That is probably 0.001%. These are sophisticated criminal enterprises. Some of them are affiliated with a government. They are state-sponsored. Some of them are not state-sponsored. They are criminal, mafia-type criminal enterprises. I just watched The Irishman. I mean, they're not walking around with, envelopes of cash, but they operate very much the same way. They are sophisticated, and they have multiple ways of collecting the information. And so the first part, collecting data. If you're in the hospitality industry, you're probably dealing with customers, you're dealing with account numbers, you're dealing with credit cards, you're dealing with, financial information, money transfers, wires, and things of that nature. Guess what? There's a lot of money in stealing that information. There's a lot of money in impersonating somebody from the hospitality industry to say, oh, I work in the finance department, and guess what? There's been a change of plans, and you need to wire the information to this account, or wire the money. And guess what? You just got hacked, right? Nobody broke into your computer, no kid in the basement, typed on a computer, like literally it's that easy. If you plan meetings for the government, right? There are government-sponsored entities that would love to get registration lists of people that are affiliated with the government. As the other speaker said, it's not a direct hack, it's an indirect hack. How can I get involved with the people that are affiliated with the government as a way to eventually gain trust and gain access, right? It's literally as simple as an email with a link, right? and they are so sophisticated, it looks like it came from your bank, it looks like it came from your HR department, it looks like it came from your benefits department. They touch on all the heartstrings. They say, you know, your benefits are at risk unless you complete the survey. Oh my God, my benefits. I just had a doctor's appointment, right? You know, the wire transfer you sent failed. Here are some new instructions. Oh my God, we got to make sure this vendor gets paid, right? If they don't get paid, like the event doesn't happen, I lose my job. Guess what? Pulling on those heartstrings, that's all under the realm of cybersecurity. Vigilance, being aware of who's communicating with you and for what and why. But it's definitely a sophisticated criminal enterprise that's doing it. It comes down to the money.
So making sure that, you know, if a username and password is compromised or they can harvest my credentials, that I have some other way of verifying before that action is taken. So is it a code in the text? Is it some other type of verification that's happening before I go off? And, you know, I think a lot of our points have been, and I'm the guy with the great idea stories all the time lately right now, but it's kind of verifying that. We had an organization we were working with that had $300 in gift cards stolen off of one of their servers. Not $300,000 of gift cards stolen off of one of their servers. And they were like, what do we do? And we're like, it's gift cards. Like, they're probably like, they've already been turned into like stuff that they can resell or utilize, or somehow they gain cash type of thing. And it was, they were using those gift cards for employee wellness and benefits and things like that, like spot bonuses and things of that nature. So it goes back to that whole trust but verify, and going down to data security and data encryption is making sure things like, you know, where your financial records and other things are stored at is, you know, encrypted, and things. You should never store account numbers and balances and items of that nature all in clear text that I can just open up an Excel file and just gain access to it. You know, personally at GuidePoint, and I'm going to give a shameless plug for a vendor here, but we use a corporation called Okta. So we do a username and password authentication. And then we're able to do, you know, a second factor of authentication, whether it's pushing to our phone, you know, some type of secret code that we use, or a text message. And that, you know, ultimately, we don't have to worry about those hackers gaining access into those individual accounting applications, our email, and other systems of that nature, because we're not able to access that system directly and being able to go to that system directly. So having that second factor of authentication is very critical.
So it can be as simple as just looking at the URL. So going back to Matt's example earlier where he was talking about Keller spelled with an I, if you look at the URL that you're trying to click on to send money to do a wire transfer, and that URL doesn't look right in some way, that's where you employ Matt's, you know, call, you know, actually pick up the phone and actually have a conversation with somebody. Don't just simply just click on the URL.
Remember when I said they tug on the heartstrings, right? Usually the requests will trigger something in a person. I want to say great example. It's not a great example. A company that I worked for, someone impersonated the CEO, sent an email to a lower level HR person, and said, hey, I need you to send me an Excel spreadsheet with everyone's salary in it. I need this done ASAP. And they did it. And guess what? That wasn't the CEO. It was somebody impersonating the CEO. But that person trusted where it came from, and this is the CEO. He needs this ASAP. I'm a low level, I'm gonna get it done ASAP. And they did it, they did their job. And they were hacked. And there was no spectacular, you know, movie behind it. It was literally that simple. So it's literally somebody reaching out to you saying, hey, I think your computer's hacked. I think you need to click on this to fix it. Or, hey, I think the IRS wants, I mean, this goes by email, but also phone calls now. I get a lot of phone calls now saying, you know, I'm the IRS, and we're gonna send somebody out to arrest you for taxes. I'm like, the IRS didn't even have phones. They don't call people. Come on. But it's literally, they're touching on a nerve with people, and of all the people they try that on, it's gonna hit a nerve with somebody, right? Maybe somebody that's having a bad day, maybe somebody that already is in trouble with the IRS, maybe somebody that's needs that gift card, right? Because they can't make ends meet. So they're, again, they are really, really, elaborate in the methods, but also very simple in the methods in collecting that information. Sorry, what was the question?
So I want to follow up. I don't know, I mean, we're all in the cybersecurity room, but as you're talking about the fake AV or you have a virus on your webpage type thing, I don't know how many times I've gotten calls from friends of, around my age or similar, even my parents going, I've been hacked, I had to call Apple or Microsoft. Don't ever believe that stupidity on your website.
Or they call you.
They call me, yeah. They've called me before. And yeah, that's Microsoft. I had a great conversation with a Microsoft rep out of some country. But yeah, it was a good time. So no, and you also got to think about, especially like when, in Gary's example, when they were trying to steal salary information, they weren't necessarily stealing salary information to identify, who was making what. And they were trying to identify who was making what, who they thought would be underpaid, that they could go get information out of them for other things. So you got to think about that. It's not always about financial gain, it's always about information gain too. So we have a lot of things in the cyberspace that is happening around espionage and stealing of secrets. I mean, if you look at the news a lot of times, just look at Lockheed Martin had F-35 planes stolen, I think in the past month again, off of a security breach or something of that nature. So you got to look at that. They sometimes try to take that information to target organizations and target individuals, kind of as in a spy versus spy game that we used to play in the 50s and 60s and 70s, but only it's in the cyberspace. So then they go become your friend on LinkedIn or Facebook or some other site and try to boost you up, like offering you a job or fake jobs and things of that nature. And then finally, I wanted to, Gary, give me a great example. Has anyone ever gone to YouTube and looked up like Wi-Fi hacking or Metasploit hacking or something of that nature? One person, two? Okay, so I challenge everyone in this room to go out and watch like a 1-hour video on Wi-Fi hacking. It's not nearly as sexy as NCIS or Quantico or any other TV show. Mr. Robot might be a little bit more close, but it's still Hollywood. And I want to point that out to what Gary was saying, like, we're not sexy in any way, shape, or form, or like running cloak and dagger operations. It's a lot of like, looking at monochrome keyboards and keystrokes and stuff like that, so, sorry.
Don't get me wrong, we're cool as hell.
Thank you for that. And to add on to that, if we do get an email or malicious activity come to us through our work or day-to-day lives, where do we educate ourselves? We all know Norton or McAfee products, and most of us have the basics. But where do we go to tell our higher-ups, hey, we think that we need to upgrade, and where do we search for that information? And how do we approach that? What's our next step in regards to bringing in a better solution to protect our agencies and our organizations? Chris, do you want to start this time?
So the first step I would say is to send it to your IT department. That's the first step, right? And simply make them aware that you've got an email or some sort of link that looks malicious. And that's simply your first step.
I would say from the benefit of working for larger organizations, they often have integrations into Outlook, and so you can mark something as phishing, right? A lot of large companies, government agencies do phishing exercises, phishing with a PH, right? Those phishing exercises are intended to simulate what an attacker would try to, have you do, right? Hey, benefits enrollment time is here, click on this link to do it. And you're like, I don't think benefits started until November, but okay, right? It's a phishing exercise, and sometimes in Outlook you can mark it as phishing. The alternative to that is simply delete it, right? If somebody needs something from you badly enough, they'll pick up a phone and call you. And or send you another email, and or send somebody else an email. And it'll eventually get to you if you're that suspicious and it's that important, right? But very clear, like, your bank is not going to email you and say, please re-enter your account info. Your organization is not going to say, hey, we didn't get your dues. Please resubmit your dues to this website. There's a lot of like trust, and there's a lot of play on that trust. That's kind of how they get you, right? And so you almost have to like naturally question everything and say like, I kind of don't trust any email I get. And so you have to prove to me email that I should open you and or do anything you tell me to do, right? If you have Gmail or email services, oftentimes they catch a lot of that stuff. You know, there's typically a lot of misspellings, right? If there's a lot of misspellings, it's got to be illegitimate. But again, these attackers are even smarter than that. Guess what? They have spell check. They have people that speak English. They'll figure it out, right? And sometimes it's not even the content of the email. They may send an attachment to the email. Hey, pay this invoice. You should pay this invoice. There's nothing to do with the invoice. But they'll send it to the people that think, oh man, this is important, somebody should get paid, otherwise they're going to get sued and the whole thing. Clicking the attachment, their job's done. By clicking on the attachment, you've engaged some kind of malicious software that's going to reach out to the internet and say, we got one, send some files this way, and that begins the process, right? So it's very simple. The methods you can use to prevent it. I think, did you mention in the question it was Wi-Fi in particular?
Yeah, like
Or is that
hotel,
really-
we can talk about it. Hotel Wi-Fi.
Right.
You know, better to use your Wi-Fi.
I don't know if I'd recommend an hour-long video.
Yeah.
A couple minutes, 3 minutes
Why
tops,
was to put him to sleep?
90 seconds. Watch hour-long videos and other ridiculous things. But, you know, when it comes to free Wi-Fi, I mean, free Wi-Fi is everywhere. Go to Starbucks, you're probably here. I haven't looked. Hotels are synonymous, right? And unless you have specifically Wi-Fi set up through an event provider or an IT provider that's, you know, supposed to be secure, you have to consider those Wi-Fis to be insecure. What does that mean? It means anything that when you set up a connection to that network, anything you send from your laptop through the invisible wire of Wi-Fi to the access point and out to the internet is clear text. It's not encrypted. It's visible to anyone if they have the right technology where it will encrypt the Wi-Fi from your phone to the internet. So just that encryption, think of, you know, it obfuscates this clear text information. Instead of your credit card number, as it appears in your credit card, it's literally just a jumble of letters and numbers. They would never be able to figure out it was a credit card number. Something as simple as that can reduce your risk. Again, risk management. Reduce your risk, make you less of a target, and we'll just move on to somebody else.
Airports.
Huh?
The free Wi-Fi in airports. You have to watch out for that as well.
Calling information from citizens.
I mean, airports, like literally anywhere that offers free Wi-Fi kind of is fair game, right? And the people providing the Wi-Fi have absolutely no obligation to protect you. They're an airport. They're a Starbucks. They're giving you free Wi-Fi. What do you want from them, right? You get coffee, you're getting an airplane, whatever. Hotels are the same way. They look at it like a service, right? And so you have to kind of take it upon yourself. I mean, there are government agencies now that actually restrict the ability for computers to access Wi-Fi, wireless networks that are not encrypted. They either do that through a technical means, that literally doesn't allow you to do it, or it's a policy, right, that says thou shalt not connect to open Wi-Fi, right?
Thanks, Gary. So to elaborate more on our phone usage, obviously Wi-Fi, personal hotspots, but how can we ensure our personal info is secured when using our Androids and our iPhones? Because we know they're both different, and how are they different, and how can we, you know, protect our info with both of those when using either or?
Well, if you have an Android, step one would be to snap it in half, and then step two would be to buy an iPhone. I told Rachel, she gave me that question ahead of time, and I was like, I got the perfect answer for this. And it's not that I'm an iPhone fanboy, it's just because I know the threat landscape on the Android. But in a lot of realities, the reason why Android has become very much more of a risk is because of the app stores that you're utilizing to download apps. I was working a project and they were using some Androids and things of that nature, and we identified that there were like 15 different Bank of America applications. How many of them do you actually think were from Bank of America? One of them. So the mitigation on that is to make sure you're using like a trusted app store, because that's a lot of times where they're going to get their inroads. When you look at Apple's store, it's very controlled, very moderated, very protected. So you almost need to look at, when you look at the Android and some of your applications, I mean, I don't know how many of you out there actually go through the T's and C's of that application you're downloading and seeing what data you're going through. I know after this 2016 election, we had a big issue on privacy and what Facebook was sharing and all this other stuff. But it's all those applications and what data are they accessing on your phone. Things like Word with Friends was accessing your contact list and sending it back to them, so they could target ads to those people that were in your contact list and say, hey, Chris is playing Words with Friends, you should be playing Words with Friends type of things. So you got to start looking at it from that aspect of the house. So there's things like, you know, Amazon store as an app store for Android phones that's a little bit more secure. I haven't been on an Android platform since 2012 because of some of the security issues on the Android, and I'm not saying everyone should run out by an iPhone, just my personal preference. Also, I wanted a phone to work when I picked it up and didn't have some of the other issues, because I tend to play a little bit too much geek on my phone and try to modify the system to make it run better. But there's a lot of that thing. And then going back to what Gary's saying, is also, what are you doing on your phone? Like, what Wi-Fi networks are you connecting to? What web pages are you viewing? Items of that nature. And that could be the same thing with Apple. I mean, Apple had a big exploit that was available this past summer where you went to certain web pages, and there were some common web pages that had embedded links, and there was an exploit happening on those iPhones that was able to get access into those iPhones. So it's not as much on the store side with the iPhones, it's more on the application side. And a couple years ago, there was a text message that was being circulated around and sent around, that if you open up that text message, your phone would just shut down and brick. And that's another thing. So there's exploits in any type of code or anything that's developed. It's all in how you connect and access those different players. And one thing I wanted to touch on with, when we talk about airport Wi-Fi, hotel Wi-Fi, Starbucks Wi-Fi, any Wi-Fi that doesn't belong to you, I don't know how many people have been paying attention to the DHS Zero Trust program that they've been putting out. But one of the other big things on top of that, actually Google was the first one to this game before DHS said zero trust, zero trust. If you haven't noticed, they're about 2 or 3 years behind the rest of the market. But the big thing is Google had this kind of beyond corp is what they called it, where people were connecting out to the organizations. So when we talk about public Wi-Fi and items of that nature, we're moving much more our organizations. And our organizations haven't gotten there, especially our federal organizations or organizations that support the federal government, is into this cloud environment. And being able to be protected in a cloud environment. So when you connect into that Wi-Fi, you don't have to VPN back to home. You know, and I'm not talking about your home, but wherever your computer's home is, that's corporate policy, then they go out through the internet. So there's much more different aspects of that security and aspects of the security landscape and being able to protect you from a zero trust or beyond core architecture, and being able to provide different capabilities on top of that computer that aren't cumbersome, that protect you, and those are even now existing over into that mobile platform, that Android or that iPhone type of capability. So, Chris, and I haven't said CrowdStrike, are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, I didn't want to make a commercial for you, so.
Great, thank you. I just want to ask one more question, then we'll open it up to the audience. So as it relates to what's going on in our world right now, in the geopolitical environment we are in today, can you discuss what the cyber industry is doing to protect and prevent cyber attacks? If you want to touch on Iran or anything like that, feel free, but I just wanted to get some current news in as discussed.
So there's always something in the news about cybersecurity. There's always some sort of adversary out there that's trying to breach the America, going after some sort of industry in the U.S., right? Simply whether it be federal or commercial, it doesn't matter. So CrowdStrike tracks 127 different vendors across the globe that are trying to breach some sort of aspect of the U.S. government or some sort of commercial entity. It doesn't really matter what's in the news. It's really focused on, if you have a good cybersecurity policy in place, that's going to protect you against any adversary that's in the news, whether it be Iran or China or Russia or whomever, right?
I'm going to echo that because, anything that happens from any geopolitics, any type of world event, we have a trade deal happening with China. Believe me, we're not friendly with China just because we're getting a trade deal done. There's a lot of things happening on the backside of trying to get information back and forth. Part of this new trade deal is technology transfer. So we don't have to transfer our proprietary information and technology to China to be able to have them build that same thing. So they can then take our proprietary information, our patents, and develop the same steel and then sell it back to us. So there's a lot of things that China is in Russia and Ukraine and North Korea and Iran and Syria and all these other organizations are still going to try to go and get our information, whether it be financial, energy, manufacturing, any of that data, because they're trying to be like America and take a lot of our innovation. And I'll pick out, I won't say the vendor, but there's a vendor out there that sells firewalls, and they sell them for half price of what the leading firewall vendor is. And it's not because they're selling that firewall because they developed a better widget. It's because they didn't have to spend as much time researching and developing that firewall to be able to go to market. Because they stole the other company's firewall design and plans and architecture, and they just had to put it on a different piece of hardware or silicon to make it run. So a lot of times when you see things of that are happening in this world, it's because these other countries are a lot of times taking US data, US proprietary information, and just re-engineering it on top of their environment to make it run better. And then what really gets me is when they come back and sell it to the US and be like, hey, we can sell this to government at cheaper costs and be more efficient. It's like, well, yeah, because you took American innovation and American jobs to go do that. And they hide behind a lot of these tariffs and trade deals and items of that nature. But different story, different day. I won't go down my rabbit hole too far. Rich just give me the snake eye.
You did touch on something with, products of nefarious origin or with, maybe unclear motivations. I think CISA had come out with an advisory about Kaspersky antivirus, right? Which is a Russian company that has an antivirus client that maybe you have on your computer, maybe you bought a computer, it was installed on it already, maybe you're paying them $70 a year to keep it. They're not, I don't think they're saying Kaspersky are stealing your info, but there's certainly a lack of clarity there with this company that sells a product, markets that product to people, and whether or not they're using that with the sort of utmost care and diligence. I think, there's always going to be something geopolitical in the news. I almost think that's a distraction, right? It's almost a given that we're going to hack Iran, Iran's going to hack us because that's what's in the news now. But guess what? Russia's always there, China's always there, other state-sponsored actors. I think you only have to look back to the last election cycle to see where hacking was used for something other than stealing money. It was used as a concerted psychological operations campaign across the world, not just the country, across the world, to sort of, apply the will of the Russian state against something that's not a tangible thing in our country, the election, voting for a president. There are cybersecurity systems behind that, but they didn't hack those systems. They hacked the party, and they hacked the people through psychological operations, through spreading lies and mistruths through social media, where a lot of people get the majority of their news nowadays, through creating dummy accounts, on a variety of platforms, and basically spreading a message and beating the drum, right?
So I want to open up, we only have a few minutes left, sorry, I wanted to give some more time for the audience, but of course I want the audience to ask questions. We only have one microphone, so if you wouldn't mind.
We'll run the microphone.
Okay, so you guys speak loud.
I can run.
If this isn't because I'm married to one of those guys, it's
This guy.
so for the agency that I work with, we do a cybersecurity, we just did a cybersecurity training session that you have to go through. Is there a way that other people in here could maybe reach out to their IT people to get that implemented or go through some type of, I don't know, training situation? Because you, at the end, if you pass, you get a certificate. And with NASA, you're like, oh, hey, we're gonna send this over to you so you see that we actually did it. So that's across the board throughout NASA.
Yeah, so most federal organizations should be operating under that. There is, I believe, a mandate for some type of education to be able to gain, you know, whether you have your acceptable user policy and that cybersecurity organization. Now, if you're outside of the federal government, things of that nature, most organizations should be, like I know I have to do my annual sexual harassment and my, you know, different types of training. So most organizations should be implementing that. If that isn't the case, I would almost recommend going to your HR department than your IT department, because the IT department's more worried about keeping systems operating, keeping data available. They're not going to be worried about cybersecurity, where your CEO, your CFO, and your HR department would be more concerned. I don't know if you guys have any other.
I see an opportunity here for this organization to post links on a website to maybe open source training, like you're mentioning. I want to say Department of Homeland Security might be a great place to start. I think each individual state might have something, you know, it depends on the Corporation Commission or something affiliated that way. Not every company does that, right? That's really a mandate of federal agencies and large corporations. I think they get it, but they also are resourced to be able to do that. When you have like companies of one person or two people, right, or independent contractors, you don't have that luxury of, you know, annual corporate training. Maybe that's why you do that. That said, it doesn't absolve you of that responsibility in a sense. So I imagine if there's like open source type training like that, maybe we can work with you to kind of find some of those and put them on the website.
Thank you guys so much for being here and sharing all the information and all the work that you do. Cybersecurity is so important. I just wanted to say, to your point, CISA has all the alerts and bulletins if you are curious about how you're being protected by Homeland Security. So please visit us. The information's there. And yes, you're absolutely right. Through MSISAC and other organizations, you can coordinate getting training. NASA is awesome. Thank you. I just wanted to ask, for planners who do not work for a federal entity, but are working with federal entities, and therefore we have certain standards with PII, as you mentioned, what are the benchmarks for planning software for when planning events of any size, especially those larger events, because that is information that we know people want to get, and we know that some of these planners who may not be a part of our organization, but are working with our organization, are using.
So I'm not going to give you the list right now, but large organizations, government agencies have something called an information system security officer, right? And I think what you're saying is you're having people use an external system to register that system is collecting personally identifiable information. Somebody else, right? Somebody else is. Usually the agency is concerned with, is this system connecting to us? If so, our rules apply to them. And so there's an advantage to this external system not having to do that. But that said, there are similar principles that external system should apply to. or be applied to. And so, you know, things like encryption, do they encrypt the contents of what people are, you know, submitting or sending them? Who has access to that, right? Is it easy to get access? Can anybody get access, or is it limited access? Who controls who has access to that? So almost a lot of these kind of feel like common sense questions, but not everybody's born like in the cybersecurity world, right? You know, things like, is the website secure? Meaning, is it HTTPS? And if so, is that the strongest? Is it mildly strong? Is it sort of strong? Is it the industry standard or not? Sometimes vendor documentation will, you know, you can go to their website and they'll brag about it. They'll brag how secure they are. But you can also Google their name to see if they've been breached recently. Go to, you know, Krebs on Security or something like that. Which was he was a Washington Post reporter, but he focuses exclusively on cybersecurity. So there's lots of resources out there.
Kathleen?
Kathleen on the board. So I've seen several articles recently about the selling of the .gov domain. So one, do you know, is that true? And if it is true, what recommendations do you have on how we vet that?
I was going to say, I haven't seen anything on that or heard anything about that. I would be apt to have to go up and, like, here, just say Google that and kind of and trust and look at a couple of different sources to verify that is. I'd be hard pressed to believe that they'd be selling .gov domains to OPA corporations. If anything, they did .gov domains to state and local institutions that had government business. But typically, the .govs are saved for, and I remember when I worked at a school district in Michigan, we couldn't go get a .gov address even though we were a K through 12 institution. And so we went out and signed up for a .us address. So our domain wasn't something crazy like k12.mi.us because people couldn't remember that. So that, I mean, I'm not sure on the validity of that. I think it's Russian misinformation.
Yeah.
Just gonna put it out there right now. You can hear it first here.
Any other questions? Okay.
I got a funny story about events I can share with everyone.
Okay, we're gonna hear one funny story. And then if you ordered any beer or wine from this bar back here, make sure you pay your tab, please. It is a cash bar tonight. But then I will turn it over.
So I was talking about an event I was at in 2016 in Tampa. And I wanted to, it came up that somebody said, you should share that tonight. So, and this is how important not only cybersecurity, but the organization of events are. So this event in Tampa had 3 exhibitors spread throughout the hall with a government organization that did intelligence community, DoD, information of that nature. And the organization had 3 10x10 booths throughout, and they were selling those little copper bracelets. And part of that was going around and trying to get as many people to get their badges scanned and to kind of feel on them and stuff like that. Very much attractive Ukrainian women working the booth and items of that nature. But the whole point was, and as we were sitting across on the other side from this booth talking to one of our partners and listening to this, they were talking to them like, yeah, you should be wearing these bracelets into work, and you should be doing this, and this will really help with your balance. And see, when you're standing up here normal and I pull on you, you fall over, but as soon as I put the bracelet on you, you don't fall over. So this is important as event people, and as we talk about cybersecurity, and this is more personal cybersecurity, but what they were doing was collecting people's names and contact information and items of that nature to then be utilized against a phishing campaign or what we call a whaling campaign, where they're going after those targeted people to try to gain access into their organization because of their positions at said organizations, or even system integrators or other vendors that were working with that. And I wanted to end on that story as an aspect of being mindful of who is in and around your events, and being mindful of what is happening here at your events. Eventually DSS was notified and escorted these 3 booths out after a couple hours, but you can only imagine in a couple hours of them working that booth how much information they might have been able to gather and obtain by looking at badges. You know, we all wear badges with contact information, and we scan things, as well as, you know, look at conferences like RSA conference that happens out in San Francisco. A lot of these organizations, a lot of conferences, that you have people walking around that aren't necessarily there as part of the conference, or maybe they're trying to get into the business of having conference. A lot of times they're trying to gather and honeypot a lot of information that happens within that conference to then utilize it as a cyber campaign against them. And we do a really good job in the United States about doing a lot of things with student visas and other types of visas. But these people that when they come in, and I'm just using this one thing, we knew very much that they were not US citizens that were working in that organization, with the way they acted, the way they behaved, and the way they were going after individuals. They were there to gather information, to then take that information and take it back to then utilize for a cyber campaign against those individuals in that organization. So just want to make sure everyone's kind of aware of what the cyber risk landscape is.